Technoblade has been stuck in the prison since June 6th, and due to this, it's given us many questions on when he will escape, how he will escape, and whether he even will escape the prison. Because we do know that Pandora's Vault is meant to be inescapable, but we also do know that Technoblade is one of the best players in Minecraft, and he has a whole team behind him named the Syndicate who can assist him on breaking out of this prison. But we also do know that Technoblade came into this knowing that it may be a trap, and that he knew he may not be able to get out of the prison once he's inside. And this was a risk that he was willing to take as soon as he heard about the whole situation. As soon as Quackity came to him telling him that Dream wanted to speak to him, Technoblade knew that this may be too good to be true and that this was just a whole thing to set him up. And now that he is trapped in the prison cell with Dream, we are left here waiting for the day that he will escape. So let's talk about who will assist him and how he will break out of the prison in my version of Dream and Techno's escape. Let's start off with the day of his visit. At this point, he has had time to think over what may happen, think through the possible outcomes, and fully plan out whether he thinks it will be a trap or not. He has also had time to write a will, in case things go south and the unexpected happens. Taking these precautions is something we need to know, because we can then understand that Technoblade was willing to go into the prison no matter what, and has understood that the worst possible outcome would be getting trapped inside there and not being able to get out, and he was willing to take that risk. So knowing this, what's in the will? We still haven't had a single clue to what the will may contain, and for all we know it could contain nothing or just say subscribe to Technoblade. But if we look at it from a story standpoint, let's assume it's a plan to break Techno out if worst comes to worst, because Techno did tell Phil to only read the will if he doesn't hear from him in a couple of weeks or so, obviously implying that the worst outcome did happen. So let's say that this will contains the plan to break Techno out. Phil opens the book to read It's Time. I've been expecting that this will happen, and it's time to get the Syndicate together for their first mission, to break out Dream. He continues to talk about how he got into this mess, and that Quackity was the one who quote-unquote tricked him, and says now that I'm in the prison, they are not going to let anyone in or out. So if you're going to get Dream out, you will have to brute force your way inside the building. But first, use the Enderpearl stasis chamber in the Syndicate room to get me out. Once I'm out, I'll have a book containing information about the insides of the prison and the easiest route to take to get Dream out. And that's exactly what Phil does. He goes down into the Syndicate room and teleports Technoblade directly to him. Technoblade looking tired and worn out, he says he cannot help with this mission. He explains a potential way into the prison by going through the roof, as they saw a hole in the obsidian a while back when talking to Tubbo about nukes and such, and tells Phil that he'll mainly need Rambo for this job, not knowing that Rambo and Dream have a sort of connection and that Rambo doesn't like Dream very much. Phil goes over to Rambo's home and leaves a sign telling him that it's time and to get all your gear together for the mission. Rambo doesn't really have any fighting gear, so he decides to grab all the stuff that Tubbo has kept from the final fight with Dream. He breaks into the room and looks at the armor, knowing whose it was and what it might do to him if he wears it. But knowing that Techno and Phil need him to do this makes him put it on anyways. At this point in time though, Rambo isn't really informed that they will be breaking out Dream. He thinks that he's going to do this mission to get Techno out, and that's all. Techno and Phil don't want many people to know about breaking Dream out because they don't know how much they can trust people like Rambo, especially seeing as Rambo is friends with many other people, and that if he decided to tell Tubbo or anybody else that he's friends with that they're going to be breaking Dream out of the prison, it might cause other people to try and interfere and stop them. So they all gear up and get ready to break into the prison. They wait till night falls and Rambo is instructed to go out and scout the top of the prison, find this gap in the building that Techno mentions in the will, and see if they are able to use it as a point of entrance. He climbs the side of the prison, gets to the top, and looks around for anything that may look like what Techno described. But as he starts to run towards what looks like a hole in the roof, he gets hit with a sudden flashback. A flashback of something that he doesn't actually remember, and assumes that it wasn't him who did it, but his other half. It's a flashback of placing TNT on the roof, blowing it up and creating the gap in the roof. This was something he was controlled to do, but doesn't really know why or how. This memory happened all the way back in February and doesn't really understand why it's coming across now, until he realizes that this was the day that Tommy planned to visit Dream for the final time, and ultimately, was the cause for Dream murdering Tommy. Rambo now knows that this was all his fault. Everything bad that has happened over the past few months has mainly been caused by that explosion and the death of Tommy. So this causes Rambo to go crazy. He doesn't think straight and feels like it's time to escape, get away from people that he loves, because he thinks if he stays, he will only hurt more people. He needs to get rid of everything that is linked to him or he has an attachment to and run, causing him to get rid of and burn down things that he loved in the hopes of making people mad at him and not wanting to find him. Rambo is ultimately a lost cause, and until he figures out how to control this other part of himself, he may not come back to help the syndicate. The following morning, Phil goes to the prison to finish off this plan. Rambo had never contacted him, so Phil is really unsure whether this gap in the roof is still there or whether or not it's a viable option to get into the prison. But ultimately, he has to go and see anyways, because this might be their final chance at getting Dream out. He climbs the side of the prison and sees a sign next to a singular gap in the roof. It's a sign from Rambo telling Phil to mine through the block. Phil is really confused at this point. Why didn't Rambo just tell him this in person like they planned? Where is Rambo now? Had he been caught? Is it a setup? None of this makes too much sense to Phil, but he has to go in anyways. He drinks some of his gallons of milk and mines through the block, exposing a man-made hole into the pipes of the prison. This pipeline is used throughout the whole of the prison, and the only way to access this pipe from the inside would be to break it. So Phil drops down and enters the pipe. He follows it around to see whether this could lead to anywhere useful, and lucky enough, it did. Using this pipeline and the information that Technoblade got from Dream, they had managed to find the emergency room. This is a room with a button that shuts down everything. The lava around the cell, the machines to get to and from the cell, the doors entering the main prison, and more. This same button was pressed when the explosions went off and Tommy was trapped in the prison. Pressing this button would give Phil around 5 minutes to get to the main cell, build across the lava which is temporarily shut off, and get Dream back over into that room. It's a really risky play, but from the looks of it, it's his only option. He smashes the button. Alarms throughout the prison start to sound and all the doors had been temporarily disabled. Phil runs through a pathway which is labelled main cell and comes to a staircase which goes up to the control room for Dream's temporary home. In a rush, he builds over to the cell with cobblestone that he had in his inventory, downs more gallons of milk, and mines through the netherite block that had popped up when the button was pushed. Knowing that the guards are more likely going to try and kill Dream rather than himself, he drops all of his armor on the ground so that Dream can equip it and stay safe. They both sprint across the lava and through the same pathway that Phil had entered the area by. They go past the emergency control room and towards the roof of the prison, just in time for the alarms of the prison to stop and the emergency shut-off system to end. Both exhausted and out of breath on top of the roof, Dream asks what's next then. Phil, not really knowing the answer to this question, just tells Dream that he will have to come to their home and hide out there for a while until things cool down. But Dream knows things won't cool down. People won't stop coming after him, and hiding isn't going to help anyone. He doesn't really have any friends and he doesn't trust anybody at all, and the only reason that Technoblade is breaking him out of this prison is because of a favor that they made ages ago. And knowing that Phil being there means he only has one option, which is to go back to his home, he quickly tells Phil that he is sorry for this, and that Quackity is the main man to blame as he pushes Phil off of the roof of the prison and ultimately killing him.
How do you feel about revenge?
I'm feeling it.
Are you a big fan of revenge, Phil?
Honestly, kind of feeling it. Actually diabolical. Holy shit. This is gonna be chaos, dude.